Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of the Narcolepsy Optimized Podcast. Super excited to have you guys here. Wanted to walk through in this very first podcast. I wanted to do a couple of things for you guys. One, I wanted to know what you can expect from this podcast. I want to talk about some of the content that's going to be going into this podcast, some of the science, the research, and the materials you guys are going to be able to access inside of this podcast. I wanted to talk a little bit about my story, who I am, how I came to this place, a little bit about my narcolepsy life, and I also want to talk about finally kind of the 5 pillars that I found for narcolepsy energy. Now, these 5 pillars are kind of the same thing as the content that's going to go inside of this podcast. So those are going to kind of tie into each other as we go into each of those single topics. So we're going to talk about 5 different topics today. And those 5 topics are really going to be the base layer for what this podcast is going to be made from. So first, to give you guys a little introduction on me, who I am. My name is Jerry, and I have had narcolepsy for a little over 10 years now. Now, my first 7 years of my narcolepsy life, my narcolepsy journey was pretty similar to many individuals out there. I was bouncing from one stimulant medication to the next. Every 3 to 6 months, I was changing medications or upping my dose on stimulants. And that's just basically how I lived my life. A couple months at a time, going into the doctor, increasing the dosage or going to something different. And that just went on and on and on. It was sometimes things were good, and a lot of times things were like a roller coaster. I would have good days and then extreme bad days. And I finally got to a point that after 7 years of living like this, I decided that I wanted something different. And I had realized that I was putting all of my eggs in the basket that, how do I improve this narcolepsy? How do I improve these narcolepsy symptoms? How do I live a better life with narcolepsy? I was putting all of my eggs in the basket of, there is going to be a magic pill that is going to fix everything for me. And that's just was my mindset for the entire 7 years. And finally, I made the shift in my mindset that, I can't just rely on this resource because obviously it's not working for me. It's not giving me the things that I want, the results I'm looking for. So I have to look inside of myself. What things am I not doing, or what things can I do more of to improve my health, to improve my body, and understand narcolepsy to a much deeper level that is going to give me the energy and the motivation and the life that I want to live, because I had got to a point where I was just not living the life that I want to live for the rest of my life. And that is what has kind of brought me to this point. So the first 2 years of that was a ton of self-exploration, a ton of research, trying to understand narcolepsy better. And it was really difficult at first because many of you guys know when you search, how do I improve my narcolepsy symptoms, or diet or exercise or whatever, you just get a bunch of generic crap, right? It's like, you should exercise and you should eat healthy and try eating keto. And that's about it. That's the extent of the information that's out there. And as far as applicable, like how do we apply that into our lifestyle, it didn't help me at all, right? It didn't help give me a roadmap on how I could move forward with my life with narcolepsy, or the things that I could try, or really give me a roadmap. What it did is just, it made me start things and I ended up quitting them in frustration because they didn't work, or I couldn't commit to them, or whatever they may be. And so of those 2 years, I finally got to a point where I was really starting to understand narcolepsy. I was starting to understand the problem with narcolepsy, like what the real issues in the brain were going on, and what deficiencies we have as individuals with narcoleptics, and really the position that we are in our lives, and how I could use science and resources and tools to kind of counteract those things that we are deficient in. So my background, my education, so I studied exercise science, and I owned a fitness facility for 3 years. I was a personal trainer for a long time. I've worked with a ton of dietitians. So that's kind of the scope that I'm coming into this with in the area of exercise, and of not necessarily exercise, but more science and physiology, and understanding the brain and the biochemistry, and how do we improve from that level to improve how we feel, to improve our motivation, and really make up for the things that we are deficient in as narcoleptics. And so that has led me to help other individuals with their narcolepsy, and that is where I have come to today. So after about a year, the past year of working with other individuals and perfecting this process, I've been able to really narrow down the things that make a difference in individuals with narcolepsy's lives. Not just myself, but again with other individuals, and being able to see common factors in people that I've been working with and how I'm able to improve them. And that is what I am here to bring you guys inside of this podcast. Lessons that I have learned, access to research articles that I have been finding, and many, many other things to come I'm very, very excited about. So to get into what we're going to be talking about inside of this podcast, first what I want to do is talk about, well, the same thing, I guess. I want to talk about the 5 pillars of narcolepsy energy. And again, this is stuff that I have found in my personal life. This is stuff that I found from working with other individuals. And this is also stuff that I found inside of research articles. Okay, so this is, there's a mix of information inside of here. A lot of it, the majority of it is based off of science and research. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. The 5 pillars. So when I'm talking about pillars, I really want you guys to think of this as a pyramid. Okay, and we can't build the pyramid without a strong foundational base. Okay, and that's really how I go through and how I structure my coaching programs, is understanding there are levels to change with narcolepsy. That getting to a life where you have more energy is not just about, okay, what are the energy hacks and what are the supplements. There is steps that you guys need to take in order to effectively make this change happen. Because you could think, if you do not have the base layer of the pyramid, you are not able to successfully achieve the top layers of the pyramid because you haven't built a strong foundation, right? And that's really, again, I found this to be one of the most critically important things, and really one of the reasons why I feel like so many individuals that are trying things with narcolepsy are failing at them, because they don't have these foundational pieces set into place before they can implement these other strategies. And they try to implement these other strategies don't work because their base layer, their foundation is not strong. And then they say, these strategies don't work for me, right? And then they just throw them out and they say, and that's it for that. All right, so that is one thing that I really want you guys to understand as I talk about these. And I'm going to talk about them in order, going from the base layer and moving our way up. All right, so the first thing, our first foundational piece with narcolepsy to have more energy, focus, motivation, all of that stuff is sleep. All right, is sleep. And I know you guys have heard about it. I know everyone talks about it, but it is the truth. The truth is that we have a sleep disorder. Okay, everyone treats the problem as if we have an energy problem during the day. We don't have a neurological disorder that is defined as an energy issue during the day. While that does happen and it does break our circadian rhythms, and we'll talk about that in some of the extra episodes, where the really big problem is our quality of sleep at night, right? And so many individuals are going through and they're sleeping 6 hours or 5.5 hours a night. And they're waking up during the day and they're feeling exhausted and crappy, not able to focus and unmotivated, and they want the things to hack their energy, to improve their energy. But the issue is, I personally feel, if you're getting less than 7 hours total hours of sleep per night, you can't go up to these other levels. You can't work on these other things. If you try to exercise your body at a point where you're sleeping 5 hours a night, you are stressing your body, right? You're putting your body in a stress state. Now, your body can handle that stress state if you give it time to recover. But if you don't, you are simply depleting your resources. Again, another reason why people feel when you hear about individuals exercising and saying it exhausts them, I feel like that is one of the primary areas. Okay, so that's pillar number 1. That is our base layer, all right? And we're going to talk about all of these topics in the upcoming episodes of the podcast. All right. Second level of the pyramid is understanding the emotional aspect of narcolepsy. And this one is talked about, I feel like talked about a lot in the narcolepsy community, but maybe not talked about in the right way. For me personally, when I think of how do we actually improve ourselves and how do we actually accelerate and get better with this stuff, I think that there's a lot of understanding and misconceptions when we're talking about the emotional side of narcolepsy, right? And when I talk about emotional side, what I'm really saying is that how many of you individuals, if you think about yourself, can go into a particular situation, whether it be into a crowded environment, whether it be to work, whether it be a conflict with a partner, all right, this same exact situation, and you feel a sleep attack or you feel fatigue coming on, right? So one day at 2 o'clock, for example, you're sitting at home, you're able to work, no problems. The next day at 2 o'clock, you're inside of a group or inside of this sleep trigger, whatever individuals call it, and then all of a sudden you feel this wave of fatigue going on to you, right? Now, if you're like most individuals, the majority of people say, wow, as I start to think about this, that is me. That is exactly what happens to me, and it happens every single time I do this particular thing, and I just deemed it as my trigger, right? So understanding what is actually happening there, uncovering those layers is really, really important for our progress, because when we're talking about emotional health and being happy and energized and living a full life, when we have these triggers occurring in us, the common thing to do for individuals is to avoid these things, right? It's to start avoiding these things. And that creates this consistent pattern of avoidance, right? Avoiding things in our life because we are afraid of the sleep trigger, or afraid of feeling fatigued, or afraid of what's going to happen in that situation. And while avoiding it at the initial part may be a good first step, that is not how we want to live our life, right? That is not the way that we live a full and happy life, is constantly avoiding things. What we need to do is we need to understand better what's happening on the inside when we're feeling these sleep attacks and these triggers, and be able to improve on these areas, right? And we're able to do that. That's when we're able to move forward and start improving our lives. But as I said, this is a pyramid. This is a second layer. If we don't have control of our sleep, we can't have control of this emotional aspect. We're sleeping 5 hours a night. Our emotional centers are going to be all messed up, and we're not going to be able to improve. Again, we'll talk about this stuff in later podcasts. Super excited for it. All right, level number 3, we're going to talk about nutrition and supplementation. All right, nutrition and supplementation. So a lot of you guys have heard different strategies for nutrition. I have found a lot of what people talk about. There are components, again, for me, and what I found in my research and working with a medical dietitian, in my personal experience, I have found that there are components to a lot of things that everyone talks about that are right, but no one has the full picture. No one has the full picture on how to really set up your nutrition to make you perform your best. All right, and I lumped in supplementation with that as this pillar, because really what we're working on, not only with nutrition, like specific nutrients, we're also working on deficiencies. We're making up for these deficiencies, as I talked about earlier. So as individuals with narcolepsy, a lot of my studies have uncovered that there are chemicals that we are deficient in inside of our brain, right, from narcolepsy. And these vary from individual to individual, but from the majority of it, there are chemicals that are responsible for motivation, for drive, for focus, for happiness. The individuals with narcolepsy are typically deficient in, right? And this is something that no one's really talking about, and no one really addresses this issue. So when we're talking about nutrition supplementation, a big part of that is addressing these deficiencies in order to make our brain perform better at a higher level. All right, and a lot of that is understanding too how we'll talk a little bit about stimulants and how they work and the effects of those things. And I think that there's a lot of interesting conversations we'll have around that topic as well. All right. Fourth pillar, all right, that's pillar number 3, or layer number 3 in the pyramid. Again, we're working our way up. As you work your way up, you're going to feel your energy is going to get better, your clarity is going to change and stuff like that. So the fourth pillar is exercise, okay? Now you notice this is the 4th layer. So there are 3 layers that you have to really get good at before implementing exercise into your routine in order to make it effective for you. And I think that's why so many individuals struggle to understand this. And so many individuals fail with exercise, and they're not getting the benefits from exercise that they want. And I think that that's one of the big reasons that I've seen. And not only that, it's understanding what type of exercise to do and what type of exercise is going to give you the best benefits, and how do you structure this exercise program in order to be effective, in order to feel good after you exercise, right? The point of exercising is for us to have more energy and to strengthen our body and to improve our cardiovascular system, to give us the ability to focus more and to feel good and be happier, right? It is not to exhaust us. And that's the effect that many individuals have after exercise. They feel exhausted, they feel overly fatigued, they feel crappy, they feel worse. Now, what motivation is there for individuals who go and do something, they put effort into something that makes them feel worse, right? There's no motivation to do that stuff, right? And that is why in this podcast, we're going to talk a lot about how to structure your workout programs, how to get started, and what types of exercises are you looking for to get the benefits that you want. Because, again, there's a lot of misleading information out there, and I'm here to sort that stuff out. And when we're talking about exercise, again, this is what my degree in, this is my bread and butter. So I'll have a lot of cool insight and tips for you guys on there. All right. Now, the final tip of the pyramid, this is the top of the pyramid. Again, we have to work our way up this pyramid. The final piece is what you would think of as energy hacking or biohacking. All right, there are things that we can do to improve not only the chemicals in our brain that we are deficient in, but also improve our energy levels, improve our focus, improve the effectiveness and efficiency of our body. And we can't do those things if we have crappy sleep. We can't do those things if we don't have good nutrition and good recovery processes set into place. And that's why it's at the tip of the pyramid. Everyone asks me, what's the energy hack that's going to make a difference? Well, there are many energy hacks I could talk to you guys about, but if you don't have these other things set into place, they are going to have the opposite effect on you. They're going to make you feel crappy and fatigued, right? And then you say, well, these things don't work, right? So we're going to talk about all of that stuff kind of in order of this podcast, and that's kind of the structure of how I'm going to set things up. Now, for those of you guys out there wondering, like, how does this work with narcolepsy, right? Can we actually really change with narcolepsy? Because I get that question a lot. Can we actually improve our narcolepsy? And I found there's two answers to that. Two answers to that. One, there are things, as I talked about, that we are deficient in that we can improve on. Can we fix them? No, we can't. But can we improve them? Yes, absolutely. And the secondary answer to that, there are many other energy systems inside of our body that can improve our energy levels, our focus, and our sleep, and all of these things, right? We have one deficiency. We have one singular deficiency, and others may have multiple deficiencies. But the truth is our body is much more complex than just one simple system. So the concept that I do is, one, how do we make up for the deficiencies? And two, how do we optimize the rest of our body, the rest of our brain, to be performing at its peak in order to feel better with narcolepsy? All right, so I am super excited to get into this podcast. My goal is to release a new episode every Monday and every Thursday. So I hope you guys are excited for this coming episode. We're going to be talking about sleep first because, as I talked about, that is our first pyramid. So we will be talking about sleep. If you guys are excited about this podcast and you want to support me in a very small, very fast way, please take 30 seconds to go and review this podcast. If you go down, you click the buttons to review, leave a 5-star review if you are interested, and leave any comments and questions. Any topics you guys are interested in, please go ahead and comment those. We have a Facebook group and a YouTube page. On Instagram, I'm very active. You guys can check me out there. I'll leave links for all of that stuff down below. Can't wait to show you guys all of the amazing information I've learned, and can't wait to hear all of your guys' stories as this stuff unfolds. We'll talk to you guys soon.